Hello, my friends, and welcome once again to the Elliott Homestead Kitchen. We have a very busy and big week here on the homestead because we're going to be teaching our very first online workshop. It's 4 hours of cooking with 20 people from all around the world. So in order to get ready for that, we're going to give our kitchen a little spruce up. We're going to put a little extra time and effort into cleaning things up and getting it prepared for its really big debut in this way. Part of that involves cleaning and tending to our copper collection, which is going to be a big player in this workshop. We get a lot of questions about our copper, where we get it, how we know that it's safe, how we use it, how we take care of it, and I thought that would be the perfect topic for a video with you today. Before we dive into all things copper, I would like to thank Made In for sponsoring today's video. This is the perfect fit, and we're going to touch a little bit more on this as the video goes on, but I want to introduce you to their brand new copper line. This is really incredible copper that's all made in France. It's oven safe up to 800 degrees, which means everything can go right from your stovetop into your oven. These are heirloom quality copper pieces that you'll be able to pass down to the next generation. I want to show you them. This is its grand debut into my lineup. The body of this pan is made entirely from copper. The inside is stainless steel. What this means is that they're able to withstand a much higher heat than tin, which means you can heat it up higher in your oven than you normally would copper cookware. It's incredibly beautiful. This is a 5.2 quart. They also have a saucepan and a saucier. There we go. Look at this. It's so heavy, so well built. I want you to stay tuned for the rest of the video because we're going to be talking about what makes a copper pan like this so incredible. So make sure you use the coupon code ElliottHome, click the link below the video, and get one of these made-in copper pieces in your kitchen. Okay, let's dive into this. Now, obviously, if you were to buy a beautiful new copper pan like this, you would have no question about using it. Is it safe? Is it going to work? Yes, absolutely. But then you see these old vintage copper pieces, and one of the most common questions we get is, are they even safe to cook in? People just assume that I keep them hanging in my kitchen as decor and not actually as useful pieces, and that could not be further from the truth. So first question, is copper safe to cook with? Yes, absolutely. Now, given that, copper needs to be lined in some way. So this made-in pan, for example, this is all solid copper. Inside is stainless steel. So this gives you a safe surface to cook on. Now, before stainless steel, copper pans were made and they were lined with tin, which is what you see here. So it looks fairly similar, but this is a lot different. One way to tell if a copper pan has been tinned, obviously, is that it will look shiny like this. Now, so long as it's tinned or has stainless steel on the inside and there's no copper showing through, you are good to go, and that is perfectly safe to cook with. I'm going to show you one of my copper pans that needs to be retinned, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Ooh, this is a heavy one. You can see this pan has a little bit of copper showing through. Now, I wouldn't worry about this amount too much. I use this pan often, but it's on my list to send into my Coppersmith, and it needs to be retinned. And what she does when she tends to them is she literally melts the tin and puts it in and hand wipes it around. And it's really neat when you get them back from her because you see all those individual little hand wipes from lining the pan right in here. These are a lot of these are handmade pieces, and there's little telltale marks that will tell you that. Okay, so is copper safe to cook with? Yes. What do you want to look for in a copper piece? Now, you notice when I picked up this made-in pan, I said it's heavy, and copper is heavy, and there is a reason for that. So back in the day, all the handles were made with iron. Iron is heavy. Iron sort of needs to be treated like you would treat a cast iron skillet, where if it's exposed to too much water, it will rust. And so you just need to kind of be aware of that, make sure you wipe it off. But an iron handle is heavy. And in order to counter that, we kind of need a nice heavy stout pot. So we want to look for copper that's anywhere from 1.5 to 3 millimeters thick. If you shop online for copper, almost every single person who sells it will say the thickness of the copper because it's a very common measurement that people ask for. You want a thicker pan. The only exception to this is when you're using a saucepan and you want it to be really light and you want to be able to flip it around really easy, but that's the exception to the rule. Ideally, your copper pan is nice and thick and stout and heavy. So why would we want to mess with copper in the first place? Is it even worth all the fuss? Well, yes. Why? Because it lasts for so long. Many of these are handmade pieces, and many of these are over 100 years old. In fact, this pot right here, which badly needs to be cleaned, I just got back from my Coppersmith probably about 6 months ago, and this pot is over 200 years old. You can see the little marks and dings in its former life, but it still functions perfectly. The fact that none of this cookware is going to end up in the landfill and that it will actually go on to serve generations past me is really appealing to me as a home cook. So you're investing in some of these pieces. Sometimes you can find copper for really great deals, but you're investing in these pieces, but you're investing in pieces that will truly last beyond your lifetime. And I think that's really important, especially in our disposable culture. So let's talk about where you even find copper like this. We talked about what we want to look for. We want it to be between 1.5 to 3 millimeters thick. We want it to be tinned, although we can fix that if you find one that's not tinned well. So this is my copper collection that I use every day. And I started collecting this copper 12 years ago. Stuart bought me my very first pan, which was this one right here. And he bought it from a little town in Fairhope, Alabama called Aubergine. And he bought it for me, and I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, but I had no idea how tinning worked. I knew, like, isn't this unsafe? Aren't we not supposed to actually cook with this? So it just sat in my kitchen for a really long time, and I don't want that to be the case with you. So we look inside. As long as you don't see copper in there, you're good to go. Now, I'm going to put a link below this video to the Coppersmith that I use. There's only a few of them in the country. Her name is Sarah. She's based out of Wisconsin, and she does incredible work. I think she has put her hand at restoring almost every piece that I have in my collection. She's amazing. So I'll link down below. If you're not sure, you can send her pictures. You can get in contact with her. Sorry, Sarah, if this totally overwhelms you with people asking you copper questions. But she does such fabulous work. I always love when I get a piece back from her. You probably only need to worry about retinning your copper maybe every 10, 15 years or so, depending on how much you use it. So this isn't like an every year kind of a thing. It's a couple times in your lifetime kind of a thing. Now, this is actually my first pan, copper pan that's stainless steel on the inside. So this one will not need to be retinned. So this is going to be interesting to kind of put to use in my kitchen and see how it sort of marries with everybody else that we got going on here. Okay, so Etsy is a really great place to find copper. Now, traditionally, most copper comes from France just because there's such a heritage there of using copper in cooking. So a lot of times you'll see sellers on there based in France who are selling their copper, which is great. Just have them send it. Let's see. So Kat in France is a friend of mine. She's on Instagram. She does a monthly pop-up. So it's just one day a week that you can get access. But her husband, Alan, restores copper, retins copper, and they sell copper there on their store once a month. So I've gotten some pieces from there. Some pieces I've collected from flea markets throughout Italy. This one I just found it at a local antique store. So it's a collection. It's not one of those one and done kind of a things. This is not meant to be that. This is meant to be sort of a lifelong love affair with your pots and pans that you use every day in your kitchen, which is exactly what this is. And it's really fun to go and piece out all those little pieces and remember the memories of when you got them in the first place. A lot of times these heirloom pieces will come bearing the mark of whether it's a coppersmith who's restored it, or maybe it was the blacksmith who made the handle. So you can see, like this one, for example, it has a little RG on the handle. Can you see that? That's a neat one. My favorite saucepan that I use all the time is here, and it has the initials as well of the Coppersmith who took care of it. If you order copper from Cat, this is one of my pans from Cat. Actually, this might have been before they started doing it. Hers has a little RH stamped into it for Rabbit Hill Copper. Here it is. There's her little initials. And so it kind of becomes this conversation, really, between all this history that you get to join in on. It's really neat. So if you have copper that needs to be retinned, I'm going to put a resource for that down below. Other than that, it's really just the daily care and use, and I'm going to show you how I take care of my copper and what I clean it with. Now, copper naturally patinas just with humidity and oxygen and use, and that's okay. It's one of the reasons I love having it in my kitchen is that it's reflective of its environment. So if you look at a pan like this, for example, they change colors as they hang. And this isn't a bad thing. It's not like the copper is being ruined or anything like that. It's just part of the patina. So these are all dirty. That's why they're going to get a little bit of a polish up. But I kind of go back and forth. I love the way they look patinaed. I also love the way they look really nice and sparkly and clean. They kind of get, I've heard it called the rosy bottoms, like a little baby's bottoms. And I think that that's kind of a sweet way to think about it, especially when they're all lined up like ducks in a row, just waiting to be cooked in. So one of the distinctives that you'll often see in copper pans is you'll see iron handles like this, a little bit heavier, a little bit stouter. You want to be aware of them just so you can wipe off any excess water, dry it after you're done washing it. The other alternative is brass. So these are both really traditional metals to make handles out of. Iron doesn't heat up as quickly, and so it's a little bit easier to handle for a little bit longer period of time. Brass heats up very quickly, but it's lighter weight. So it's not a better or worse, it's just sort of a preference. And oftentimes I don't really pay attention to the handle. I just look at the pot. Is this one that I can make use of in my kitchen? And if it is, we're good to go. All right, let's go to the sink. Okay, let's talk about cleaning copper. Again, this is kind of this mountain that people have built up in their minds, but it's really, really simple. So ideally, if you get food crusted on your copper, you can just let it soak for a little while. You do not want to use harsh cleaners or harsh sponges inside. Tin is very soft, and so we don't want to use anything that could scratch that tin. Even a fork, I don't want to use that when I'm cooking in my copper. That's why I like using wooden spoons. They're just my preferred thing. You don't have to worry about them scratching the tin up at all, and they just feel nice in your hand. But inevitably, your pans are going to get dirty. So the inside I will clean with just dish soap and a sponge. Very simple. Again, nothing too scratchy. Now, the outside, typically when we use our copper, actually Georgia, who's filming behind the camera, she's our dishwasher. And she has kind of a routine in her mind. She likes to do the outside with Barkeeper's Friend, which is a cleaner. I love this cleaner so much. This is what we use to keep our copper nice and clean. So every time they go through the sink, whatever copper piece it is, it gets washed with Barkeeper's Friend on the outside. I'm going to show you what that does to it. So there's really no need to use this on the inside. It's a little bit too harsh for that. Dish soap will just do fine in warm water. But every time it goes through, it'll be wet, obviously. And this is a powder. It also comes in a paste form if you like that. Now, copper is a lot less soft than tin, so I usually use this scratchy side of the sponge. And copper is reactive, so it's reacting to the, oxalic acid that's in Barkeeper's Friend. And you can see with just a little bit of, now mind you, I've been out of Barkeeper's Friend for a couple of days. And so this pan has been used quite a few times without its normal cleaning. But just a little bit of elbow grease. And, some people don't bother doing this at all. Some people like their copper pans perfectly patinaed, bearing every mark of what they've been cooking. And I totally get that. Like I said, I go back and forth. Sometimes I do want to polish it up. And since we're going to be filming a lot in our kitchen over the next couple days, especially for the workshop, I want everything to look very nice and clean. Makes it more of a joy for me to cook in the kitchen when it's like that. Look at that. So you can see how well it cleans up. All of a sudden it's taken on a completely different hue. You don't want to forget the little copper brads here used to hold the handle on. Okay. Quick rinse in warm water. Now, you don't have to use Barkeeper's Friend. I know I'm going to get a lot of comments. You can use lemon juice. You can use a proper copper cleaner. You can use tomato sauce. The point is that that acid is what's going to react with the copper. But my tomato sauce is more valuable to me as tomato sauce and less as copper cleaner. And so I always try to keep some Barkeeper's Friend on hand just because it's my preferred choice. It's not nearly as toxic as a lot of the copper cleaners out there. So I like using it on a daily basis. Okay, look at this. Little shiny bottom. So this is what your copper will look like when it arrives, most likely, depending on where you buy it from. It's really buffed and polished. There are special tools that coppersmiths use to get it this shiny. So it won't look like this, but for a few weeks when you get it from the coppersmith. This is what it will look like cleaned, hanging in your kitchen most often. And this is what it will look like if you don't clean it. Not bad in any way, just bearing the marks of being useful in your kitchen. So I have a little bit of work cut out for me today. This will probably take me about 30 minutes to get all of this scrubbed and shiny and hung back on the wall. But that's not a bad investment for really a lifetime of cooking. And I like to think of my pots and pans as my friends. They do me a favor in the kitchen, and I'm so thankful to have them here, even if it's for a brief period of their life. This will be getting to make its debut in our workshop. We're going to be making a really beautiful tarragon chicken, which I'm excited about. And this is bigger than any other one I have in my collection. I think this is my second biggest size. So we have a much greater capacity, which is always a good thing in my book. I'm going to put the link for the Made in Pans down below the video. Use the coupon code ElliottHome for 10% off Made In's Copper Collection. I'm also going to tag a few of those resources like Sarah, my coppersmith, and Kat and Fran's monthly pop-up on Instagram that she has for her copper. There's some great resources for copper out there, and I love being a part of this story that's sort of keeping this heirloom cookware alive. Thanks for joining me in the kitchen today.